Peter, so great to speak to you. Tell me about your Tommy.
Tommy was a wonderful kid, and I say kid, he was obviously growing up, but I still remember him. All the photos I got of him is when he was a kid. He was such a nice kid, he really was.
He was training to be a Marine?
We applied to be Marines. We don't know what the outcome was because we never got there.
But he had an ambition to serve his country.
He's a qualified precision engineer, but he didn't feel that was challenging enough, and he thought that being in the Marines would be an environment that was challenging him as well as his career.
And you were proud of him?
Oh, very.
And so then, March the 12th, 2022, your life has changed forever. How were you told what's happened?
My wife and I were in bed that night, and early in the morning, 6 o'clock, I think 5:30, 6 o'clock, we got the phone call from the hospital to say that he'd been stabbed and he'd been involved in an altercation the night before. They said it was fairly serious, but we didn't think it was that serious. My wife went to the hospital. She phoned me about half an hour later to say he died. I work in a mobility store, and I ran screaming through the store. They must have thought I was mad because I just couldn't believe it. We told your son's dead when, we only saw him the night before. So he was fine.
And obviously, why this story is so infuriating is because his killer, his murderer, this absolute scumbag of a human being, Abdul Rahimzai, was already a killer. He was an illegal migrant who should not have been in the UK. How did you learn about the circumstances of the man who murdered your son?
We knew that he was violent and he threatened people with knives several times in Bournemouth. A few weeks before the trial, the barrister, our defending barrister, he privileged us with information that mustn't be passed on because it could prejudice what the jury thought. And he told us he was wanted all over Europe, Norway, Italy, Serbia, for murders and similar offences, drug trafficking as well as human trafficking.
And what's so astonishing is that not only was he able to gain entry into the UK, he actually lied about his age and his circumstances. He said he was a 14-year-old from Afghanistan, and he was put into a school and into a foster home.
It's unbelievable, even to us at the time, before we knew his outcome and his previous convictions. He was obviously more than 14.
This was an adult. This was a full-blown criminal.
Yes, he was.
And a killer.
And a killer.
In one of our schools, allowed to roam free around Bournemouth.
He was in one where he was thrown out of because he threatened and carried a knife. And he was put straight into the other. The parents are up in arms because they weren't told, and I think they should have been told if that sort of violent character is in the school.
So how do you feel about the fact that in the UK, for some reason, our soft touch policies allowed this man into the country to murder your son?
Soft touch policies is right. We welcomed him in with open arms without even phoning any of those countries that he was refused entry and saying why.
So no checks?
No checks at all. The unbelievable thing is, my wife is Filipino, and she said she had more checks done on her when she came into the country with immigration. And I've had more checks done on me when I joined a gym. But he had no checks at all, absolutely none. And even though the various people were warned, his foster parent and the immigration side of it were warned that he's a dangerous character. He actually posted WhatsApp pictures of him beating someone up, and with that sort of behaviour, and it was known to the police, he should have been asked the question, or he shouldn't have even been allowed in the schools. He should have been in prison.
And Tommy didn't have a chance that night, did he, in Bournemouth?
He didn't.
It feels like this man was out to kill.
He was out to kill, and the CCTV footage that we had to sit and endure, but you have to do it even though we don't want to do it. You have to do it to see what really happened. It shows that this Abdul chap threatened various people along the way in Bournemouth. In fact, he'd actually got involved in an argument. It wasn't him, it was between a doorman and some club goers. So he was out to kill that night. God knows he would, if it wasn't our son, unfortunately, which I wish it wasn't, it would have been someone else.
Police had been warned 7 times about the fact that he was carrying a knife.
Several nights before.
The fact he shouldn't have even been in the country anyway. Do you feel let down by the system?
Very, very let down, because the argument to that was the police said they get several hundred comments a week that someone's carrying a knife. They can't check them all out. And no one checked him out. And even though the foster parent has insisted and given him lots of times he'd been caught with a knife, and she'd taken it away from him, but nothing was done. And because of that, you know, our son died.
And that has had a devastating impact on your life, hasn't it, Peter? You'll never be able to get over it, I imagine. And I know there have been some really rough times over the past 18 months for you.
Going to the court and everything was reliving it all. It breaks our heart, because it's taken away not just our life. Some people say that it's left a hole in your life. It's more like a chasm. It's more like the whole world is falling apart because Tommy's gone. He was engaged, and he was engaged to Gemma, and he was going to, I think, probably take it a bit further. He was very serious on her.
And he would have been a dad one day, presumably?
I think with Gemma, I know you can't tell, but the two had a magic between them. It wasn't just a girlfriend, it was someone very special.
So it must be devastating for her too. And so, when you hear people criticise folk who say, look, we have to stop the boats because we have to stop this flow of illegal migrants into the country because so many of them, no one's saying 100%, but so many of them are criminals. And they say, no, you're being heartless, you're lacking compassion. What's your response to that?
I don't think compassion comes into it. It's common sense. And I ask anyone who pleads compassion, if it's your child, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father is in the same situation, you wouldn't think the same. Anything you want, we'll put you in schools or here, there and everywhere. We'll give you a life that you don't have to pay for because you're an asylum seeker. And that's wrong. 9 times out of 10, they'll find out the info after the event, not before the event. Otherwise, someone else is going to die.
Peter Wallace, I really, really appreciate you speaking to us today. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
What a great man. Heartbreaking story. A Home Office spokesperson said foreign national offenders who exploit our system and commit crimes here in the UK will face the full force of the law, including deportation, at the earliest opportunity for those eligible. The government is committed to stopping abuse of the immigration system, taking decisive action against those who try to play the system.